The EU, for the first time in decades, is having to be responsible for their own safety. I lived in a jungle hammock Monday through Fridays for 3 years.
You look around everywhere and you see just soft, weak, complacent men.
Look how many people have been killed in just the Ukraine-Russian war. We're talking in millions.
Ric Prado, welcome to the Man of War podcast. It is an absolute honor to have you on, man. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Rafa, thanks for having me. It's a real honor.
Oh, man, thanks. All right. So, your background, holy crap, man. That's pretty powerful stuff. I got here, CIA senior operations officer. You were paramilitary intelligence. So let's talk about your career. I mean, first of all, you are of Cuban descent, or you were actually born in Cuba?
I was born in Cuba. I left through the Peter Pan program at the age of 10 to a orphanage in Pueblo, Colorado.
Wow,
Yeah.
amazing. Wow, that's I mean the Peter Pan project, man. That was a lot of people came over. So talk to me about why all of a sudden here you are in the United States. Um, you're coming into this country. And what was your focus point? Did you start immediately going, your next steps moving forward? I mean, you went into the CIA. I mean, how did all that happen?
Well, the my dad kind of groomed me as a kid to be a man. My dad remains my hero, even though he's gone. His words of wisdom when he sent me to the country all by myself was, "I will see you again," and that was my shield. That was my security blanket at the orphanage. Orphanages are always rough and they're not fun. When they finally came down, uh, high school, a little bit of a troublemaker, good grades, bad conduct, getting in fights and stupid stuff like that.
Hmm.
In 1971, I joined an elite military unit called Pararescue as part of the Special Operations Forces for our military. I did that for 8 years, including reserve. When I went into the reserves, I rode rescue for my Miami-Dade Fire Department for 6 years
Hmm.
in the 70s, which were the drug wars. So
Oh yeah,
uh,
big
a
time.
lot of good combat medicine going on.
Yep.
And then I applied for the agency, and in 1980, they brought me in on contract
Yeah.
part-time because they wanted my paramilitary and medical kind of stuff. And then when Ronald Reagan took over, he started the Contra program, was one of the first things he did. And they immediately called me up and they said, "Would you like a full-time job?" I said, "Yes, I would."
Damn.
And that was the end. That was the back door.
Wow. And I mean, how old were you at that time?
Oh, I was around 30, 29, 30. Yeah.
Okay. So you weren't really a young buck, but you were a seasoned man by then, especially back in what was this in the 70s, 80s?
Yeah, like I said, this was 1981 is that I actually
Yep.
started in that program.
Wow, crazy. All right, so you've seen the country change over the last what? I want to say, my God, probably over the last 30 years, we've had these ebbs and flows going through the country. We've had Democrats in power, Republicans in power, Democrats in power, Republicans in power. This big, up and down. When you first started, specifically in your positions, well, who was a president at that time?
Well, like I said, with the agency was Ronald Reagan. Yeah,
Well,
that was our president. Yeah,
crazy, man. Like, I thought he was a great president. Personally, I really liked him a lot.
I do too. Yeah, yeah.
So, what were you said you were in a obviously Miami back then was I mean cocaine cowboys drugs everywhere. I mean that was the wild west. When you came to the United States, and I mean, what were you expecting here? From specifically from Cuba, were you expecting a different type of country, or were you expecting, some, a different feel. I mean, going into the streets of Miami like that, that has to be crazy.
Well, it's at the age of 10, you don't think that deeply. And I'm more into feeling
Yeah.
than the thinking part. Like I said earlier, my dad groomed me very early. So when I came to this country, my lessons were this is where freedom is. This is in contrast of what you just lived through, me. You figure when Castro took over in 59, I was like 8 years old, and I had a bicycle. I had a horse before. I had a bicycle. I had a BB gun at the age of 6. I had the idyllic childhood. Going out with my dad to the mountain to buy coffee and all that other stuff in his truck. It was just fantastic.
Hmm.
Go from that to complete desolation of our family, confiscation of my dad's business, the freezing of our funds, the freezing of all our property as soon as we said that we were going to leave. So for me, coming to America was getting back to the freedoms that I had enjoyed in an earlier life.
Love it. I love that. All right. So, talk to me a little bit then about your journeys and the things that you did, your operations, and whatever you can speak about. I'm sure there's some things that are classified and all that good stuff. But, I see here that you spent 36 months, living with rebels, and you've been to all, Latin America. And let's talk a little bit about that. What in your career stands out as maybe one of the most difficult operations?
Well, as you'll see from the book, I think that every tour that I had was yet another adventure. I was one of those that I looked for the mission, the action, and not so much about getting promoted. I still made general rank, so I guess I did okay. But the Contra stuff was by far my most rewarding, Rafa, because
Yeah.
now I'm 30 years old and I'm helping these Contras to fight the same monster that destroyed my family in my first country. I lived in a jungle hammock Monday through Fridays for 3 years. I used to come home Friday nights, be with my wife Saturday and Sunday, zero dark 30 on Monday, back to the camps. And it was the best job I ever had. No adult supervision until I got back to base. So I got into a couple of scraps there while other. Um, and it was also a very important geopolitically for us because not only the threat of Nicaragua, the Cuban, and
Hmm.
the communization of San Salvador and everything else that was going on, uh, but it was also the first covert program that the agency had that ended up being successful since Vietnam.
Well,
We did dethrone the Sandinistas. It took years, but it was done. Also, there was a couple of special operations that I was very proud of. Got my first medal.
yeah.
Uh, I had a group of, it's called the Mosquito Indians. They live on the east coast of Nicaragua and southern Honduras, and they're natural hunters. They're Native Americans. I mean, they're trackers and hunters. And I'm a military diver. One of them saw my military insignia with a dive staff and told me that he was a diver. And lo and behold, there was about 6 of them. They're lobster divers. Fast forward a few months, I trained them, and we blew up Puerto Cabezas Pier, which was the belly button for all the military material coming from
Well,
Cuba. So that was a big left hook for them. They now understood that this wasn't just a ragtag bunch of rebels, that there were some special operations capabilities there, and that was our first big left hook.
well. So let's talk about the CIA a little bit. Do they go out there and actively recruit people that are, maybe just retiring from the military or in the last year or two, or what's the process?
Yeah, work-wise, there's two main avenues. Well, actually three. Let's start with the analytical. You could go in as an analyst. They recruit from major universities, really smart people with an incredible patience for details and depth at that. Uh, that is the Directorate of Intelligence. In the Directorate of Operations, where I live, there's kind of like a dual track. One is you know, the more conventional. case officer kind of operations. They recruit primarily from colleges, kids that you have to have a degree. You have to have a 4-year degree.
Mhm.
A second language is a big deal. A third language is even bigger because we don't work in the United States. We always work
Mhm.
out at somebody else's turf. Uh, but I came in through what is called Special Activities Division Ground Branch. That's the Special Operations Forces for CIA. And that group is solely from Navy SEALs, Green Berets, pararescue, combat controllers, and Marine Raiders. That's the core of that capability, and that's our paramilitary infrastructure. So that said, that group is not just a bunch of knuckle draggers. They are case officers. They go through the full course at the farm. I've been a chief of station. I've been a deputy chief of station. I've been a task force 7. I've been to the NSC. But I was a paramilitary and counterterrorism. That was my expertise. That was my SME.
Interesting. So, do you get assigned cases automatically, or once you get your training, or is it something that you work towards, or do you get assigned to an area? How does that typically work?
Well, depending on how you graduate out of the farm, that's how you're ranked. So you get your first choice, second choice, whatever. I did very well at the farm. I was lucky that I had good mentors there. And I gravitated towards Latin America. I already had done the Nicaragua gig.
Right.
Uh, um, but for us, when we hit the ground, when a case officer hits the station, um, he or she is going to inherit certain cases from the outgoing case officer, the one that's leaving that you're replacing. So that individual might have 6 or 8 assets that you're going to run and further develop and everything else. But at the same time, you're expected to recruit your own. And this all comes out of our operational directives. The CIA has operational directives that rank what's most important, whether it's terrorism, communism, or whatever, Russians, Chinese, or whatever.
Yep.
So your chief of station will say, "Hey, here are our gaps. Try to find us an in," and that's how we start our sleuth on work.
So, was this something that you always wanted to do? Work deep undercover and black ops and do all those kind of cool missions?
I one of the things that I got infected with very, very early was the enthusiasm for reading. So yes, absolutely. I always wanted to be special military. I always wanted to be James Bond. I wanted to travel. I was a risk taker. I mean, I think again, my dad kind of groomed me with that because I rode horses at the age of 6 or 7 with a BB gun shooting lizards. I mean, so it was always outdoors and everything else. I think that the one real surprise was the book. That is the one moniker I never ever expected or wanted my my name attached to. That was something that came much later. But yeah, that was my dream. I think I was wired. But here's the really important part, Rafa. I believe that God has a path for every single one of us. And if you have the testicular fortitude to get that path, you are going to do well, and he is going to groom you along the way. And now that I have time for introspection, that I look at my beginnings, living in Cuba, coming to the United States, going to an orphanage, being a streetwise rat, getting into the special side of the military, it was forging my mettle to end up the man I am today. And I'm very proud to say that, all my kids have served multiple tours, and we're a Christian family. I've been married with my wife. It'll be 44 years this year.
Oh, wow. God bless you. Amazing. Now, let's talk about your wife for a moment. When you were going in all these crazy missions, I mean, was she supportive? I mean, was it something where you were gone away and you were telling me that sometimes you would come in for a couple of days and then you would go away. And then, how did that work? That chemistry within your relationship and having kids as a father. I mean, that must have been a little rough.
It is very, very, very difficult, but it's doable. I had an ace in my pocket, which was my wife is Cuban. She lived under Castro communism longer than I did because she came out when she was like 14 or 15. And although she's younger, but she didn't come out until then. And So I had that going for me. My wife knew that what I was doing, she knew I was agency, obviously. She knew that I was doing some wild things because I'd come home with three guns and body armor and radios. Um, but she never asked, but because she knew that whatever I was doing was God and country stuff. She was the bastion for us in the family. But I also learned that a man has to have multi faces and you have to dedicate equal to both, to all of them. And for me, I never missed one of my kids' ball games when I could. Christmas is, I mean, really, for me, when I wasn't working, I was with my family. And I think that that combination of having a very, very, very supportive wife who believed in what I was doing, because, other people can, be supportive, but they don't quite get the importance of what we're trying to do. But she lived it and the monsters we needed to fight. So yeah,
Yeah, that's powerful, without a doubt. The fact that you were out there and, you were a savage on one side, and then you came home to be a father and a husband on the other side. I mean, I talk about that a lot, especially to men. Most of my 19 years as a police officer in narcotics undercover, that's what it was. I mean, I was always in, undercover operations, and my wife never really asked too much. But every time that I could, I would spend time with my family. And that was, I wasn't in, there was no in between. It was either work on the job or, with the family. So I tip my hat off to you there for sure. Let's talk about modern day. Let's jump right into Cuba because there's a lot of excitement going around
oh yeah,
with with Cuba right now. I know my parents and people around me, Cuban guys, and they're just like, wow, maybe we are closer than ever. What are your thoughts on that right now?
absolutely. I know you're a big martial artist. I started in martial arts when I was 15 myself. So, and I still practice, but um, I don't do politics much. I do history and common sense, which is probably the biggest oxymoron in the human language. But for me, I see that our current administration is doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They are choking the enemy little by little, and they have the opportunity to tap. Um, if you look at some of the successes that we've had militarily, the Venezuela extraction, for lack of a better word,
Yeah,
um, that's something that if you made a movie of that as fiction, most people wouldn't believe it.
yeah,
So I think that we're going in the right direction because, look, first and foremost, this world has always been rough and there's always been predators. The main predators that we face, obviously, China, Russia, Iran slash radical Islam. All of those are historically since before Christ. Persia was a. So those predators only understand one thing. I bite harder than you can bite. That's the
yeah,
only thing they will fear.
yeah,
So when we have guys like Jimmy Carter, who was a very decent man, a very religious man, Navy admiral and everything else, but very indecisive and came across as food, look what everything that happened. Soviet Union invades Afghanistan. Iran takes our hostages for 144 days, and so on and so on. And then comes Ronald Reagan, who you yourself said was one of your favorites. And within 24 hours, our hostages were released, and we were able to undermine the Soviet Union. So it's a matter of posture, it's a matter of pride, it's a matter of conviction. Uh, when this current administration stands across, Marco Rubio is a perfect example. I mean, he's I thought he was, kind of like an average guy. He's a rock star.
yeah,
He's really become a rock star. So when people sit across the table from those kind of people and they look him in the eye and they look back like saying like, don't do it. Don't mess with me because we will do what we say we do. And that's the biggest prophylactic in the world when it comes to danger. You know
yeah,
that from your undercover work.
yeah,
Your CIs and everything else have to look at you and go, no, I don't want to mess with this guy.
yeah. Yeah, it's a sense of power and authority, and like I think we've done a great job since Trump came into power. I think that we have taken back the reins, and I think overall, outside countries are looking at us a little bit different than what we were for the prior 4 years, without a doubt. And I believe, like what you said, man, it's a sense of pride. It's a sense of pride for our country, and it's harder now, I think, than ever to, especially for the younger generation, especially for parents that maybe have been lost themselves, to raise their kids with a pride in country. So I respect the fact that your kid served, and that's powerful because there's a pride in country there. um I think we need more of that. i think
Absolutely.
I think so. And tell me a little bit about, like, how you carried yourself through these missions, and I mean, mentally, when you went from one mission to another and just trying to get your family life together. And I mean, how did you function? How were you wired during that time?
Yeah, it is a balancing act. And like I said, the fact that I had a very supportive household made life a lot easier. Um, but it's just a matter of believing in what you're doing. I never had any doubt whether I was stealing secrets or lying to recruit somebody or doing a break in an entry, not to steal money, but to plant a bug in somebody's embassy.
Yeah.
Um, those things were what I was put on this planet to do. I knew that I was doing the right thing, what was expected of me, not from my administration, from the guy upstairs. That was so that always gave me a kind of like a backbone that I really never can say that I was hesitant, that I was ever afraid. Everybody's afraid at one time or another. This is how you handle it. But even that was always more of a hardening, a mental click into that zone where, okay, now this is what we got to do, and this is how we got to do it. But you know,
So you believe that you're growing up, especially growing up like a boy, like actually a masculine kid, you
yeah,
know, uh, kind of wired you to take on the challenges that you did. Did that affect you in a positive manner?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Rafa, one thing I'm a lot older than you are, but I'm sure you remember some of them. When I was growing up, you watch television or you watch movies, the protagonists were people that you looked up to.
Yes.
Mike Nelson from the scuba thing and
Yes.
Combat and James Bond and all these movies, they
Yes.
always had people that you can go, oh wow. If you look at what's going on TV and in the theaters today, every main character is so flawed
Yes.
that if that's the role model that the kids are seeing, that's what they're going to emulate. You know, especially when it comes to my craft. Okay, and same thing with law enforcement, but primarily with my craft from my experience. Is the fact that we're all portrayed as alcoholics, womanizers, selling secrets, backstabbing, doing stuff that the government doesn't know we're doing, which of course all the above is bullshit. We have a very distinct core of men and women who, unlike other services, are totally invisible. In the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines and police officers, you're walking down and you got your bling. You got your jump wings, you got your scuba badge. In the agency, the badge that I came in as a GS7 was the very same badge that I wore when I was a SIS2. Only the photo had gotten older, right? So you don't join the agency for glory, external glory. You don't know it for definitely not to get rich. I had classmates of mine that had, they were lawyers, and here they are doing the same thing I'm doing for as a GS11 then, where they could be in some firm making very, very big money. So,
Wow. Incredible. So, going back to the way you were raised and in Cuba, and it's unfortunate because my family, my father raised me like you. I wasn't born in Cuba, but I was born in Miami. My parents came here in the 50s, in the late 50s, and I look back and I say, if I didn't have that type of upbringing, I wouldn't be the man that I am today. it would not. I would not see life like I see it today. And my grandparents and great grandparents, and I was lucky enough to meet my great grandparents. The same thing. The way that they were raised, and it's a different mentality across the board. Now, I've gone back. I haven't personally. Let me rephrase that. I've had people that have gone back to Cuba. I don't know if you've been there lately or the last. Yeah. Uh,
That's
um,
one place I cannot go. I mean, I would
yeah.
never come back if I
Yeah.
went there.
Yeah.
They know
Yeah.
who I
So,
am.
so they say, look, the upbringing of kids, some of the values have been thrown out. A lot of the way of life, of the old way of life, has been thrown out. It's very, very different. With that said, my parents are still alive. They would love to have an opportunity one day, because they never returned after they left, because Castro took. I mean, they were my mother's family. I mean, they had huge sugar mill and beautiful homes, and you name it, and everything got swooped. And my grandfather and my grandmother came to this country, one of them to work in a factory, and my grandfather to be a mechanic. And like my grandparents, the same goes for, I don't even know, thousands of other people just like that. So do you think there's a day nearby that we will have control of this country?
I honestly think so, and I hope so for the same reasons that you do. I mean, my wife and I talk about that all the time, to be able to take our kids and show them where we live, where we grew up,
Wow.
our grandparents' grave, and those kind of historical things. I think we're going to get there, but an invasion is not a smart thing. It's that I don't see that. I said to Venezuela from the very beginning, I said we're not invading Venezuela. That's not going to happen. Again, it's the choke,
Mhm.
choke, choke, choke until they go, okay, let's negotiate. And then they deviate, you choke again. So I honestly think that we can get there. We have 3 more years and hopefully more after that, of people that are intent in making America number one. Because I've always said the day that God forsakes the United States, he's forsaken the world.
I agree.
We have
100%.
some very strong allies out there, very, very strong allies out there, but we are always the guy in front going charge.
Hmm.
And that's part of our national pride, and it should be. It's amazing some people resent that.
Yeah, crazy. Greenland. You have any thoughts on Greenland? Do you think that that's an important position for us?
Oh, strategically, it's critical. But again, look, most politicians will use the carrot and maybe show the stick.
Hmm.
Well, Trump is not not a politician. He shows the stick, and then he gives you the carrot when you become a friend. And all the beating drums about we're going to attack Greenland, we're going to take it from Deutschland, blah blah blah. That's all rhetoric. The negotiations are there. I think that a very happy medium would be, and I think that that's like to think that that's their goal. Remember, I don't have access to anything anymore,
Hmm.
but I do follow, is to have a very strong presence in that area, military bases, that can provide the area, not just us, but also the Canadians, whether they appreciate it or not, with an umbrella from the menaces of, Russia and China and others.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, because he is a businessman and because we are capitalist, have the Greenland contribute to something to us in rare minerals in this case
Sure.
that will help with our economy. I think that one of the best things that have happened in the last year was what has happened to the EU. The EU, for the first time in decades, is having to be responsible for their own safety.
Yeah,
We'll
it's
back
crazy.
you. We're with you. But, they're across your fence, not mine.
Hmm.
And you better get your sack in order because they're going to eat you. And you see it. All of a sudden, they're investing. All of a sudden, they're training. All of a sudden, they're buying military equipment. So, but strategically, Greenland is extremely, and so is Cuba. You got to understand that Cuba is a dagger in our belly. 90 miles away, the Chinese have incredible signals intelligence intercept stuff going on there. Um, so that's another one that we need to bring into the fold one way or the other.
You think the Chinese is our number one um, enemy, as I should say?
I think we have all three bring a different threat to the table. The Chinese have been an imperial, entity since before Christ. They're building their military, but they are primarily economic. They are masters. They've been going into Africa, for example, for the last 30 years, you know, um, getting, footholds here and footholds there. The first country to recognize Afghanistan after Biden pulled out and new government took over and all that was China. Why? Because of the minerals that are there. So they are a military threat to a degree, but primarily they're an economic threat that again can choke us in the long run. Uh, Russians are made from Vikings and Cossacks for the most part, and they all they understand is rape, pillage, and plunder and conquer. Um, so yeah, it is that is our future is being able to stand up, be respected, and strategically and tactically. The Russians have proven with their issues in Ukraine that they're not the U.S. military. Iraq had bigger defenses than Ukraine, and it took
Yeah,
us 2 weeks.
yeah,
Not that we should have been there, that's a different topic,
mhm,
but it took us 2 weeks. They're into years now,
yeah,
and the attrition on both sides has been incredible, but they haven't been able to win it.
yeah. I agree. I agree. That shows a lot about who they are and their might as a military, without a doubt.
The myth of their might, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What about North Korea? What are your thoughts?
Well, I owned the Koreas. I actually served in South Korea as a main
Mm,
agency liaison with their service and their military and my military because Eighth
mm,
Army was there in force. And then I was made deputy chief of station for East Asia Division, and my charter was the Koreas. I've actually taken down two North Koreans, and that's in the book because they were targeting us in different areas. Uh, Nothing in North Korea because nobody goes into North Korea. That's a complete hermit kingdom. But they have 50 some embassies, which all have one mission, and that is to steal and to spy. And that's where we go after them in those areas. And we were very successful in that. They are a nuclear power, sadly, that we have that to thank to AQ Khan. Um, but at the same time, they're not stupid. The only thing that they care about is regime survival. That's why they don't care about their people. So they know that regime survival includes not getting nuked. Nobody wins a nuclear war anyway. I mean, that's the
right.
end of
Yeah,
us.
yeah,
But everybody talks about the madman. And again, during even during his first administration, Trump was able to reach out there and kind of like sat across from him and looked him in the eye. And I am sure the little rocket man looked across the table and went, "Yeah, I think I better keep it in my pockets for now." So,
do you think that as it stands right now, that we will be seeing World War III over the next 5, 6, 7 years?
first of all, I hope not, obviously, because I'm out of a military age, but I do have kids in that age that would be and family members and so on and
Sure,
so
sure.
on. I think that if we do not stand up to the challenges now, it's like when I was a kid and growing up in Miami, or even in the orphanage,
Mhm.
if I let somebody take my lunch, next thing they were going to take was my pants.
Mhm.
And we have the same thing. If we don't face the challenges now, if we don't push back, if we do not build, the same as being a man, you be fit, you know how to take care of yourself, you know how to take care of your family, you're responsible for that, and you accept that responsibility as a country. We have that. We need to build that again. As long as we do that, I think we can keep people in check because none of these predators want to be destroyed. And as long as we keep that hand that we're tougher, we got more experience, we have economic background, and we have leadership that will bring it to you, they will circumvent that. I certainly hope not, because it is a sad, sad state for the world. Look how many people we lost in World War II. Look how many people have been killed in just the Ukraine-Russian war. We're talking in
Oh,
millions.
millions. Yes, millions. I was hearing the other day it could be in excess of 2.5 to 3 million people.
Yes,
I mean, that's insane. And this war looks, I mean, it's been going on now for what, a couple years already? I mean, this
almost
is
four.
crazy, man.
Well, this month it'll be. I think this will be 4 years,
Yeah,
2022.
just it's yeah. I don't know where that's headed, but I think that you have a couple hard-headed dudes that and Trump has tried to intervene and done everything he could from his from his point of view, but I don't know. These guys are they're going to keep on going. Hopefully, they'll end this baloney soon. Let's talk about manhood nowadays. Okay. Um, I love the fact that you said you were raised a certain way. But where do you stand now with what's happening in our world with young men, the way that they're being raised? You look around everywhere and you see just soft, weak, complacent men where, you're looking at a guy 25, 26 years old, still kind of, living with mom and dad and it really has no, you know, he can sit there until his 30s and maybe 40s and get married at one point, late 40s, 50s. I mean, you're seeing women now not have as many babies and kids. Families are literally father and mother homes have got a 34% drop over the last decade. What's your mindset, and what's your belief in what's happening out there?
Well, first of all, you got to understand that this is not happening in a vacuum. Okay. Russia and China have been investing all their efforts for decades to undermine our strength. And our strength was the American way, the cowboy. Look at each country, what they have for their icons. We're the cowboys. We want to wear the white hat. Uh, and I think that they've done, unfortunately, an incredible job of infiltrating not only our colleges, but the minds of some of the parents that, I mean, I remember when I was a kid, the first thing my dad taught me is when I introduce you to somebody, you shake his hand, you squeeze it, and you look him in the eye. And in school, they used to teach that the Pledge of Allegiance. You had teachers that you looked up to. You had PE teachers that if you got smart with the teachers, they'd go over there and they'd paddle you. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
there was consequences. So it's really troublesome. I could not be prouder of my family. My personal family and even the extended. Everybody have pretty much has this kind of backbone. But absolutely, we're not teaching it. We're not passing it forward. And that again is something that I think we can turn around. Perfect example is, we've had problems recruiting in the military for several years now. That has changed. That has changed. They've broken every record. Why? Because that percentage of men and women, because there's some very brave women out there, obviously, the men and women that are wired for that kind of activity, for that kind of courage, don't gravitate to a woke entity of any sort
Hmm.
or a politicized entity.
Sure.
My agency was so badly politicized that it became a FET. We're making a comeback. I've seen some great stuff coming out of there, and a few friends that I still have says they're turning it around. But yeah, it's a shame because that's our future. And I believe that education is one of the first places that we have to start the educational system to where things that are taught are the things that are real for this country.
Mm. Let's talk discipline. It's
Hmm.
obviously in your life, you've had a lot of it because you've been through a lot of things. And I mean, boy, I mean, we can go into this, of course. You're a guy that was in an orphanage, and from there, you've taken your life to where you are now. How many kids do you have?
I have three, daughter and two sons.
Wow. Okay, so you've been married for 40 something years. You have, beautiful family, kids. To get to where you are, you've had to have some discipline. Maybe not in your younger years, but you had to figure out a way. How did you, or was there a time in your life when you said, you know what, I got to lock shit down? Was there any time you
Yeah.
remember that?
Well, again, going back to my pops, I remember when I went into pararescue, I was going through basic training, and that whole you got to make your bed and your shirts have to be aligned, that wasn't new to me. That was my dad. My dad was one of these guys that if you looked at his work van, it looked like a SWAT truck. Because when he came to this country, he became he was a carpenter by trade. He was a businessman in Cuba. We had a coffee roasting company. When he came to the United States, he made a living, a decent living as a carpenter. My dad's van, when you opened it, it was like all the extension cords were on one side, neatly wrapped, drills, hammer. It was like the inside of a SWAT truck.
Yeah.
So for me, that was natural. So for that transition to the military was not a big deal for me. I think that that's the beginning of discipline. Martial arts, as you very well know, are based on discipline. I was blessed that my first karate instructor, Jim Alfano, was a Force Recon Raider Vietnam vet. And he was hard as woodpecker. This was Kyokushin, which is, as you know, it's a pretty hard art.
Hmm.
And so I had those kind of role models besides my dad. I think martial arts have been a big part of my life throughout, still is, and that's part of the things all my kids learn very early. All my kids started, including my daughter, they started at an early age learning how to take care of themselves and how to be respectful, and that ethos that comes from the martial arts. Then, of course, the military. You mentioned the percentages, but I taught at Fort Bragg for 7 years after I left Blackwater, and I had I used to go to there 8 times a year to teach a very special course, Advanced Special Operations and Techniques was the name of the course. And my wife used to tell me, says, because I would come back and go, oh, the traffic sucks. I hate Fayetteville. And she finally one day says, do you have a girlfriend there or something? Because you keep going back. And I said, no, babe, I'm with men. And when I'm in those circles, I look around and I see these 20, 30, 40-year-old guys that are hard. And they have beautiful families and they go to church. But one guy would come in and he still has a limp because he had a bullet hole in his leg. Hey, high-fiving everybody because he was getting deployed.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, that was such a refreshing thing because one thing that both my sons told me when they came back the first time they came back from college was, Dad, I saw you and your friends were normal. They had never dealt with regular civilians. Everybody came into my house. First thing they do, take their gun, put it in a high place so the kids can't get it. All the guys are fit. All the women are fit. Everybody's got an opinion and they'll back it. All of a sudden they're out there in that real world
Hmm.
and both separately, my oldest son and my middle son, or my youngest son, they both came back and said, I thought you and your friends were normal.
Oh man, I love it. So let's go back, talk a little bit about the hiring in the military. We've seen there was been a very soft wave for a few years prior to Trump, and you've seen a lot of, I hate to say it, but a lot of young men who have done their 2 years or 4 years, and then they come out, and it's almost like they didn't learn a damn thing. It's almost like, what happened to resiliency and discipline and the mindset. And I started to, because I have a lot of friends that are still instructors in the military, and just I know a lot of people in those circles, and they kept on telling me, hey, listen, we have gotten soft. When it came, right after the first wave of Trump, and then when Biden came into power, within a year or so, the military had gotten so soft. They started letting, transvestites and transgender and all this stuff, and they were handing out blue cards. I don't even know, some shit like that. I'm like, what happened? What is happening? Are you afraid that if for whatever reason the Democrats take power and take control again, that the military is going to go back to the way that that it was, 4 years ago?
I certainly hope not, Rafa, but it is a possibility. I'll tell you why. One of the things that makes Trump so powerful is that he's not a politician. Nobody owns him.
Yeah.
I am a firm believer that a lot of the people that have betrayed this country as our leaders and politicians
Hmm.
have been bought off, and not just by other Americans and by money.
Yeah.
Um, just think about it. If we could undermine the Russian military and make them a country that takes a man dressed as a woman, but it's a colonel to be your role model, boy, that would in CIA that would get you promoted 14 times. Okay. So this is what they've been doing. It has been a
Yeah.
consistent effort. And the same way we recruit sources, Chinese and the Russians also recruit our people. And politicians are very vulnerable because when you live in a world where everything is a negotiation, after 4 years, you owe your soul to somebody else.
Hmm.
And that's why I'm totally against career politicians. I think that people should have term limits, just like
Agree.
George Washington did. Did two terms, went back to growing tobacco. So I hope not. I think that pendulums swing and they gain momentum. I think right now we have the pendulum is swinging to real leadership. Look who we have for the Secretary of War. Okay. You have a guy that goes out there and does PT with the Green Beret guys.
I
All
love it.
right.
Yep.
Look who we have for Kennedy. You know, look what he replaced. I don't know if you remember the poster child was a
Yep.
very, very weird individual. This guy's out there with no shirt doing pull-ups, and now he's going to talk to me about health. Yeah, I'm going to listen.
Sure.
So I'm hoping that the pendulum swings hard enough our way, uh, and that also that the Democrats wake up and smell the coffee
Hmm.
because they have to realize that if they want to win another election, they got to come to the middle. That is one of the things that the chasm that we are suffering right now. I haven't seen it in my 75 years. I just you figure if you go back to guys like Kennedy, he was a moderate.
Sure was. Yep.
And so we had people that, yeah, you may believe in this, you may believe in that, but at the end of the day, I honestly believe that the greater majority of past presidents were proud of being Americans and were proud of America.
Hmm.
Boy, I tell you, this, you know, pushing for Sharia law,
Oh,
pushing for little kids to have check sex changes before they're even,
crazy.
you know, when you have politicians selling yourselves like that, look at the imbroglios that we got going with, daycare centers and people that come in and they have $100,000 in their bank account, and 2 years later they have 50 million.
Yeah.
So
I find
I
that
think
I
the
find that
American,
amazing.
yeah, well, I think that the silent majority in the United States has gotten their eyes open, and I think that was the one big contribution Biden made is like he scared the crap out of those quiet individuals that are out there just working and trying to make ends meet and taking care of their families. They woke up. Let's hope they stay awake.
As a Latin male, how do you feel about what's going on right now with ICE and all
But
this with ICE? The whole, border situation and the people screaming left and right and how do you feel about this?
well, okay. So first of all, look at results. Okay. 18 months ago, we had hundreds of thousands of people coming into this country illegally. Many were criminal. Many were actually sent terrorists. We have cells inside our country. Um, and how does that now? People don't even try to cross the border because they know that even if they make it, they're going to be bounced back. So that's number one. The second part is that look, we need legal immigration, and the immigration is a two-sided thing. It's not only um, you know blocking the borders, but it's facilitating in a very big way those people that want to come in legally.
Hmm.
which is a pain for those poor people. Sometimes it takes 10 years to get that, you know.
Sure.
But the thing with that strikes me with ICE is that we have castrated our law enforcement to the degree that they're defenseless. I will give you an example. When I was in my 17s or 16, 17, 18, I was in a street gang called the Crowns in Miami. They still exist, I hear. Okay. Never, and we thought we were tough kids. I mean, we were fighting the Athenians, I mean, buying Pastorita, all that stuff was going on.
Hmm.
Never, ever, ever would it cross our mind to mouth off to a police officer back then, because you were going to get a clipping. And then the judge was going to give you labor, and then you go home and your dad was going to beat the crap out of you. We've lost all that.
Oh God, we
I could
have.
not be a law enforcement officer. Having somebody this close to my face spitting, I got to hit him.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been there, my friend. I've been there.
I know.
It was I just retired, let's see, 4 years ago, just a little bit over 4 years ago. So, I was all throughout the pandemic. I was all throughout the big riots. I talk about certain stories, uh, and it's sad, because the respect factor across the board, zero respect for police officers. Walking up on you, grabbing your badge, trying to spit on your face, going to your cars, kicking your cars, screaming, doing, and you go back, and it is a worthless job. I taught in the police academy for many years. Um, most of my career was in narcotics. I was part of the SWAT team, hostage negotiation, all that good stuff. But I was attached to the DEA. Was in the DEA Tactical Diversion Squad, and
Mm.
working for the federal government and working, at that level, you don't get to see what happens in the community so much. From the federal side, you're a little bit detached, right? Everything, you're working larger cases.
Bigger picture, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So having both, having the feel of both sides, it's pretty sad, man, because like you said, you were taught respect from a very, very young age. And I was taught respect. I mean, man, you never disrespected a police officer. I mean, that was just not a thing you do. But to that, I have a question. Do you think that it's upbringing? Do you think that it's the schools, the media, social media? Where do you think that all this, disrespect and flagrant behavior and violence, where do you think it stems from?
You know, the old when we would do the multiple choices, D, all of the above,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
in different degrees, like everything else, obviously. But it starts at the family. You know, all my sons have sons and daughters, and I always tell the people, I said, the kids do what they see you do, not what you tell them.
Hmm.
And if you're, if don't ever drive without your seatbelt. You don't have your seatbelt on, and you have a beer, kind of example.
Sure.
Uh, so I think that starting with the family, getting back to, like I mentioned before, the education. But the biggest thing is political. When you have, and like I said, you probably have dozens and dozens of arrests on your belt, and you risk your life to arrest this scumbag. You put him or her in cuffs and take them in. And the judge goes, "Oh, no bail. Go ahead. We'll see you." And they go back and do exactly the same
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
And the point of that is called consequences. Consequences. I taught my kids, and my dad taught me from day one, consequences. Not all consequences are bad. Consequences can be good. Okay.
Yeah,
But action means consequences.
yeah.
And if you are allowed to spit him. If I was king for a day, if you laid a finger on a police officer, 30 days minimum. And I'm talking about I just tapped you in the shoulder and grabbed you.
Hmm.
If you hit a police officer, you're going to jail for a couple of years. If you pull a firearm on a police officer, I hope he or she just shoots you and saves me the tax money, but you got to do hard time. You pull a gun on a cop, it should be automatic 15 years in Sing Sing or some crap.
Yeah, yeah. And the problem is people are not, they're like you said, there is no consequence to any of their actions. So the worst thing that they're going to get is a slap on the wrist and then see you later. And then they're back at it and they're back at it. I mean, I lived that life where you would put people in jail and the next morning you would see them again and again and again. And you're like, how many times is enough? Like how many times? So I hear you loud and clear. And that's a great point. With the final few questions here, if you came here in what around what time frame from Cuba? What year?
1962,
Okay,
April of
so
1962.
okay, so you came here in the 1960s. You've seen this country grow, and you know from a perspective. I mean, being that you've been around here for a while, where would you like to see this country go to? Like, what direction? What would you like to see this country continue where it's going now, or maybe make a shift and kind of reverse a little bit and get those family values back?
Well, first of all, I think that the biggest problem we have in this country is that we don't know how good we have it. That's why you have hyphenated Americans, for lack of better word, because we don't use that in my family, but nonetheless, foreign
Mm-hmm.
born, they come to this country and
Mm-hmm.
they have something to compare it with.
Mm-hmm.
I was giving a talk somewhere, and this lady, and I mentioned something like that, and the lady says, "Oh, well, excuse me, but I've been to Mexico." And it just one of these things that God whispers in your ear. I said, "No, ma'am, you went to Cancun on a cruise. There's a difference. Go to Mexico. I love Italy. I will go to Italy. I couldn't live there.
No.
Can you imagine going to a DMV in Italy? Much less, a third world country. So we
Mm-hmm.
don't, Americans, when they travel, they stay in nice hotels. They're only there for a few weeks. Oh my God, the Eiffel Tower. Yeah, 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 whatever. But they come back and they take we take everything for granted. So where would I like to see the country go? In the direction that it's starting to go now. I am a firm believer that the silent majority is paying attention, and I believe that that's our biggest recruiting fold. I think that we have something that other administrations haven't had is that we cater to the middle ground. Um, and I think that that's the biggest mistake that the opposition is making is that they're making the chasm wider and wider and wider. And so you got winners and losers on different sides. And so, um, the Reagan years were, again, the revitalization of this country. I mean, the prestige in the world. I mean, when Trump went to Saudi Arabia, the king of Saudi Arabia walked over to him to shake his hand.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. I've been
Mm-hmm.
in those countries.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the protocol. Um, I hope we just keep going in the direction that we're going. I do believe that the ICE issue is a big problem in the sense that we need to focus on just the criminals,
Mm-hmm.
illegal criminals, and then have a system by which those individuals that might have not come in legally, but other than that haven't done anything illegal,
Mm-hmm.
and they're willing to pay their taxes and register and everything else, that those people will have some daylight at the other end,
I
uh,
agree.
and go after the criminal element.
Yeah, I think they need to make the process more efficient,
Absolutely.
and
100%.
quicker, without a doubt. There's a lot of good people here from different countries, but at the same time, there's a lot of bad people here from
Not a
different
bad
countries
thing.
that don't belong here. So I agree 100%. Finally, um, give me a couple of ideas for especially for young men who want to step up their game and maybe live a life with like yours. Excitement, journey, hard work. Serving for a higher purpose. What would you say to them?
Well, I think it goes back to my earlier comment that we lack role models. And I think that, Rafa, I want to thank you because for what you do.
Thank you,
You
sir.
carry a message to the masses that you're not going to see it on CNN or CBS or even Fox. You know, this is a great venue for the people. I know people that all they do is listen to podcasts and when they're in the cars.
Sure.
And when you have individuals like yourself, and there's several really good people out there, they kind of plant the right seeds
Hmm.
in people's minds. So yeah, I think for me, martial arts was the big, a very big step in foundation in both character and courage and everything else. But it goes down to the family. I grew up in a family that believed in God, family, and country. And my dad came to this country penniless. We came to this country without a dime. In 57, my dad had, I'm sorry, in 59, my dad had a 57 Pontiac. We had a TV and a telephone in our house.
Yeah.
That's middle class even in America. My dad was mowing lawns and loading trucks for the first few months that he was here. My dad never took a paycheck, a welfare paycheck, and until the day that he died, he never missed voting in an election. Why?
Wow.
Because he appreciated. And you, as Cuban, you know that there's a lot of Cubans that came and they couldn't wait to get back.
Hmm.
The first year, when my dad started getting a little bit more settled, he says, "We're not going back. This is freedom, and I'm not going to chance it for my family."
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, there's so many great stories. So many people that I know, and Cubans did a great. I mean, look, I'm sorry, but Miami was built by Cubans,
Sure.
and not by other Latin America countries, okay, but by Cubans, especially in the '60s and '70s, and I mean, there are, I don't even know what, I think the doctors per capita was, I forgot the percentage. It's unbelievable how many doctors and attorneys and look that were Cuban. I am so proud of my heritage. I just wish that one day I have the opportunity to step foot, and I've had the opportunity to go to Cuba, but
Mhm.
no, I stand with my family and be there. Like, no, we're not going. But I would love to go back. I was speaking to my mother the other day, and she said, "Look, I mean, I have a few years left, and I would love to have an opportunity just to go back and show you around." My dad, the same thing. Just show you around the country where we were raised and born, and I hear stories all the time, and all I can do is just picture it in my mind how it was. So, that's kind of the way it goes.
Well, he was definitely the build. You figure Havana in 1958 was 100 times what Miami was in 1958.
Yeah, crazy,
Yeah,
crazy.
The Cuban dollar was the Cuban peso was equal to the U.S. dollar.
Yep,
You know,
yep.
and so on and so on and so on. So the potential is hopefully there. The geography is definitely there.
Oh my goodness! Listen, in 7, 8 years, they would change that coastline. Wow, it
Yeah,
would be amazing. Amazing. It would be a world destination again.
yeah.
Without a doubt. Well, my friend, what I can tell you is, Rick, I thank you so much for being on here. There are so many. I have a lot of guests in my podcast, and I've been doing this for a long time. But there are only a few people that I can say, man, I connect with, and you're one of those people.
Okay. Mutual.
you know, you, there's a sense of like I know where you're coming from, and it's because our heritage, our backbone, and how you were raised, and the kind of man you are, and how you place God first above everything in your family. That is something that anyone listening to this podcast needs to connect with, because if you can put God first, family second, and country third, and live a life really that empowers you, that uplifts, and man should serve for a higher purpose. That's what we're about. So I want to say thank you very much, respect, and thank you for your service, Rick, and may God bless you, man.
Thank you for your service and God bless you right back.
Thank you,
Thank you,
man.
Rafa.